Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
We are diving into some seriously ancient, deep philosophical waters today.
We really are.
And the mission is, it's absolutely fundamental to, human existence. It's figuring out how much control we actually have over our own lives.
Exactly. We're deep diving into the Mumukshu Khanda, which is a section of a major philosophical text.
And it's dedicated specifically to the seeker of liberation.
It's it, the seeker. And our core mission is to understand the pathway to spiritual freedom, or moksha.
And that core tension.
Yes. Specifically by trying to resolve the tension between personal effort, which they call purusha artha, and what most of us would just, instinctively call fate.
Or destiny.
Or destiny, yeah.
Yeah.
The text calls it daivam.
And we're not just looking for some vague spiritual guidance here. We are looking for a really rigorous, actionable philosophical argument.
That's the key. Actionable. It tells you what to do when life feels like it's already been written for you.
But the text doesn't just start with a list of rules. It starts with a story. A really beautiful, illustrative story. What you call the paradox of Shuka.
It's the perfect framing device. It sets up the whole problem. So Shuka is the son of Vyasa.
Who is one of the greatest sages in the tradition. A huge figure.
Giant. And Shuka himself was already incredibly learned, very wise, and had, through his own investigation and meditation, uncovered the highest philosophical truths. He had the knowledge.
But here's the paradox, and this is what really anchors the whole discussion for me. The text says he was still unsettled in his mind.
Right.
And that he could not trust his own knowledge.
Yes. He'd achieved this intellectual realization, but he still felt this kind of residue of doubt or maybe agitation.
It's the difference between reading the manual for a car and actually knowing how to drive it in a blizzard.
That is a perfect analogy. He was facing this existential gap between head knowledge and, let's call it, heart realization.
So he goes to his father, Vyasa.
And he asks him the ultimate question. What is the origin of all this worldly commotion, and how does it finally stop?
And Vyasa, being this astute teacher, he knew that Shuka wasn't really questioning the truth of what he'd learned.
No, not
He
that.
was questioning his own ability to internalize it.
Exactly. He sensed Shuka's skepticism, and instead of just, giving him another lecture, he sent him on a journey.
To King Janaka.
To King Janaka, who was known for not just knowing, but embodying the knowledge of the knowable. It was a test of implementation, not of intelligence.
And this journey is, it's so much more instructive than any dialogue could have been.
It really is. So Shuka arrives at Janaka's city, and he's expecting to get an audience right away.
Of course. He's the son of Vyasa.
Right. But he's deliberately made to wait. First, he waits at the gate for 7 days.
7 days. Just at the gate.
And initially, he's highly irritated by this. He's annoyed, he's impatient.
Which, right there, that proves his mind isn't fully settled. The knowledge is there, but his ego is still reacting to a simple doorkeeper.
Precisely. So the second stage of the test begins when he's finally brought into the outer compound.
Okay, progress.
And made to wait another 7 days.
Oh, wow.
But during the second week, something profound shifts in him. Shuka uses the time to contemplate, to settle his mind, and he achieves this state of complete tranquility about the whole situation.
So the delay wasn't about status games or being cruel. It was a tool.
It was a deliberate mechanism to force Shuka to test his own spiritual strength against, a simple worldly inconvenience.
It proved whether his intellectual knowledge, this highest truth, could actually protect him from basic impatience.
Absolutely. And when Janaka finally received him, he didn't give him any new information at all.
What did he do?
He bowed down to Shuka, and he just confirmed what Shuka already knew. He said, there is nothing more certain than what you know by yourself and have heard from your father.
So Janaka just validated Shuka's own realization.
He confirmed that the world is a creation of will and loses itself with the absence of our desires. In other words, the whole show, the whole spectacle we see as external reality is fundamentally woven from our own internal mind stuff.
And Shuka's mind was finally settled. He had the proof. The world that he was so irritated by just a week ago didn't actually exist outside of his own reactive mind.
He had finally married the intellectual truth to the emotional and dispositional reality.
And after that?
He achieved final absorption. He went to the peak of Mount Meru, spent 10,000 years in meditation, and finally broke free from his mortal coil, that identity that's bound to the temporary physical world.
The lesson for us, then, is crystal clear. The path has to start with this internal preparation. That's the only thing that can bridge the gap between knowing the truth and actually living it.
That distinction between knowing and embodying is the core challenge for any learner, for any of us.
Absolutely. If Shuka, the son of a legendary sage, needed this kind of internal test, then we certainly do. So, okay, let's move to that groundwork. If Shuka's story is the model, what is the prerequisite for the seeker? What's the preparation required for the Mumukshu?
Well, the primary condition for liberation, for achieving moksha, isn't, extreme devotion or massive austerity, though those things have their place.
What is it then?
It is having a genuine, spontaneous distaste for worldly enjoyments as if they were diseases.
Okay, hold on. I want to unpack that phrase, spontaneous distaste. Does the text mean you have to force yourself to hate the world? Because that just sounds like more mental struggle.
That's a critical distinction. It's not forced self-denial. It's what the text calls a casual detachment that arises naturally from reason.
From reason, okay.
Yeah. When you analyze worldly pleasures with rigor, with what they call vichara, you realize they are inherently unstable, they're temporary, and they all carry hidden costs.
Like a disease that feels good for a moment but promises eventual suffering.
Exactly. The text states that the knowledge of the knowable is, easily obtainable, but that spontaneous, unforced detachment from pleasurable objects is hard to be had.
That makes perfect sense. I mean, it's easy to agree intellectually that, say, wealth doesn't bring lasting happiness.
Sure.
But when someone offers you a big raise or a new opportunity, the automatic sort of primal response is still attraction. The text is saying you need to retrain that primal response into a kind of neutral disinterest.
Exactly right. And to guide that retraining, the text offers a really structured approach. The 4 sentinels of moksha.
Sentinels, I like that. Guards at the gate.
That's the image. They're the necessary qualities that guard the gates to liberation. And the great insight here is that you don't need to master all 4 at once. Securing even one of them can lead to gaining all 4.
Now that is the kind of actionable nugget our listener needs. Start with one solid point of attack and the others can follow. So let's detail them. The first sentinel is peace of mind, or shanti, equanimity. How does the text define this?
It's called the greatest virtue, and I love this, the very decoration of courage. It isn't apathy. It is a deep, internal composure.
The decoration of courage.
Yeah. The tranquil mind is compared to moonlight. Cool and composed, providing a perpetual flux of purity within the soul.
That's a beautiful image. Moonlight is constant, it's stable, and it illuminates without any heat or agitation. But what does this tranquility actually look like in a, hostile world? How does a peaceful person deal with conflict?
The text says the peaceful person protects themselves with the invulnerable armor of meekness against adversity.
Invulnerable armor of meekness, so it's not weakness.
Not at all. It's strength. Adversity simply cannot penetrate this state. It also allows them to be indifferent to objects. They don't desperately long for anything, but they also don't feel the need to violently reject or leave anything.
So they're equally unconcerned with, say, coming or not coming or doing or not doing.
That's it. So if someone insults you, the peaceful mind doesn't jump to defend itself.
Right.
It just observes the insult as an object passing by, like you'd observe a cloud. And that non-reaction is the armor.
That sounds incredibly powerful, actually. It turns potential enemies into just neutral entities because you refuse to engage in that cycle of reaction.
It is the ultimate nonviolent defense. And this leads us very naturally to the second sentinel, which is contentment, or santosha.
Contentment is, it's often dismissed in our society as a lack of ambition. But here, it's framed as a sentinel protector.
It's framed as the chief good, the true enjoyment, and the text defines it very specifically. It is the abandonment of unfruitful desires.
Okay, that part makes sense.
Combined with maintaining perfect calmness regarding those desires that are obtained, it's a perpetual composure.
That's a crucial 2-part definition. So it's not just about giving up on things, but it's also about being equally composed by the things you do get.
Precisely. If I strive for a goal and I achieve it, contentment means not getting swept up in the, triumphant emotion of finally getting it.
Or the fear of losing it.
Or the fear of losing it. The text provides this really powerful metric for how deep this goes. A truly contented person views a kingdom as no better than a bit of rotten straw.
A kingdom. The highest possible worldly achievement, absolute power, immense wealth, a whole dominion.
All of it. If your composure remains spontaneous and absolute, even when you have that or when you don't have it, then you've mastered santosha.
That analogy just cuts through all the noise, doesn't it? It says that no amount of external accomplishment can ever be worth sacrificing your internal peace.
When it's spontaneous, contentment prevents anxieties and cravings from growing into briars and brambles in a bog. It's a kind of internal ecosystem management.
Okay, which brings us to the third sentinel, keeping the company of realized sages, satsanga. This moves us away from just our own psychology and into the environment of the seeker.
And in a world driven by social media and just fragmented attention everywhere.
The importance of who you surround yourself with is immense. How does the text describe this company?
In almost magical terms, really. It says it improves understanding and destroys the tree of ignorance.
Oh, okay.
But the most radical statement is that the company of realized sages is so potent, like a clear stream, that it makes traditional religious acts unnecessary.
Wait, what? Unnecessary. Things like charity, pilgrimage, sacrifice.
All of them. The text is prioritizing the quality of your intellectual and spiritual environment over, say, ritualistic compliance.
Wow. So it's saying that constant exposure to higher reasoning clarifies the path and lends a light to the right path in a way that just performing a duty cannot.
Exactly. If you are constantly discussing profound truths, engaging in a kind of self-audit, questioning your assumptions with others who are doing the same,
Your understanding improves organically.
it destroys that internal darkness with the rays of the sun of knowledge. It's a constant calibration of your own mind against a higher standard.
And that flows perfectly into the fourth and final sentinel, which seems to be the engine driving all the others. Inquiry into the nature of the soul, or Vishara, reasoning.
Reasoning is the indispensable tool. The text calls it the best medicine for the chronic disease of worldliness.
The chronic disease of worldliness.
It is the lamp that illuminates the distinction between right and wrong. Without this rigorous inquiry, one is certain to fall into error, like a child seeing false apparitions.
So being trapped in temporary desires and anxieties, what it calls worldliness, isn't a moral failing. It's a failure of insufficient reasoning. It's an intellectual error.
That's it, exactly. And the final fruit of this high tree of reason, is kaivalya, perfect attachment, which leads to unobstructed, interminable happiness.
Okay, but then the text takes this massive step. It elevates reason above all historical or divine authority.
It does. This is the part I find truly challenging and revolutionary for an ancient text. It states that words that conform to reason are to be accepted, even if spoken by a child.
Even from a child. But what about from, a god?
Conversely, words that do not conform to reason are to be rejected,
Even if?
even if they are pronounced by the lotus-born Brahma himself.
That's a revolutionary concept. It's telling the seeker, you are not just a passive recipient of doctrine. Your personal capacity for rational inquiry is the ultimate validator of truth.
It is.
But isn't that dangerous? I mean, if we subordinate all divine or traditional authority to our own, highly subjective personal reason, how do we prevent the path from just fracturing into a million different interpretations? Doesn't it just become arbitrary?
That's a great question, and it's where the other sentinels come in. The company of sages, satsanga, and the calmness of mind, shanti, become essential checks and balances. Vichara isn't just my opinion. It is rigorous, objective reasoning that has to withstand scrutiny. The path only fractures when our reason is clouded by attachment or desire or ego.
So if your reasoning is based on that genuine distaste for worldly enjoyments, it will align with universal truth.
The text trusts that purified reason will converge on the same reality. It puts the responsibility for discernment squarely on the individual's purified intellect.
That makes the whole process incredibly empowering. It's a philosophy built on self-reliance, not on blind obedience.
It really is.
Okay, so now that we've secured the internal preparation, the four sentinels, we have to move to the means of entry. And this forces us to address that primary tension of this deep dive, the primacy of personal effort over destiny. The teacher, Vasishta, he really pulls no punches on this one.
He really doesn't. He severely condemns the belief that one is confined by fate.
He sees it as an intellectual and spiritual weakness.
A huge one. He warns that prosperity, and here prosperity means true internal fulfillment, not just, money flies far away from such men.
He even likens them to ignorant beasts.
He does, for attributing their lack of progress to these external forces they can't control.
And the condemnation gets even more, cutting. He likens the fatalist to a maggot in a wound.
It's a harsh image.
It is. It suggests they're sort of content in their own self-inflicted misery, enjoying this false bliss of idleness while being completely useless to themselves and to the world. It's a complete repudiation of passive acceptance.
And to understand why this reliance on fate is such folly, we first have to clarify the text's definition of destiny, or daivam. This is crucial.
Right. What is it if it's not some supernatural force?
In this philosophy, destiny is not a separate entity that randomly controls events. It is the mechanical result of our own previous actions.
So it's karma.
It's the accumulated result of our actions in former existences. Vasishta explains it so clearly: destiny is merely the accumulated result of what we have done before.
So fate is just our old baggage. It's past accumulated effort, good or bad, whose consequences are now showing up. It's deferred causality.
Precisely. Vasishta says, fate is nothing but the result of our actions in former existences. Destiny is only a meaningless word. He calls it a false notion rooted in the minds of the ignorant who lack the self-awareness to see the chain of cause and effect.
So it's a word of consolation that people use to signify the consequences of their actual past efforts.
That's it. So if you blame destiny, you are actually just blaming your own past self. You're acknowledging the power of action, but you're refusing to acknowledge your own agency in the present moment.
And that realization sets the stage for the big argument on the might of present effort.
Yes, the text categorizes actions into two kinds: those from former lives, which is fate, and those from the present life, which is current effort. And the argument is absolutely clear.
Which is?
The acts of the present life generally supersede those of the past.
So while the past definitely has momentum, it is not immovable prison. Present will can override past inertia. The text uses an analogy for this, right? The two contenders.
It does. It says fate and efforts contend like two rams of unequal strength.
Okay.
The mightier one, the more vigorous one, overcomes the other. So if your present exertion, your prusha artha, is superior in strength and wisdom and consistency to the consequence of your past effort, your fate,
Yep.
you win. You overcome it.
That's a fantastic dynamic image. It implies a constant battle, but one where you always have the power to feed the stronger ram, so to speak.
It's always in your hands. Another comparison is to an adult youth subduing a boy. The present strength is just inherently greater than the past consequence.
Or on a daily level, it says, a bad act of yesterday is averted by its remedy of today.
Exactly. If you made a mistake yesterday, a focused, diligent remedy today immediately begins to mitigate that past error. You're not stuck with it forever.
So if my past effort, my fate, is dragging me toward laziness or misfortune, the text demands I meet that force with a greater counteracting force today. This is the definition of agency.
And the power it attributes to this present will is truly immense. The text claims that energy, constant practice, and wisdom can break down Mount Meru and the demerits of acts in men's former lives.
Mount Meru, the legendary cosmic mountain, the center of the universe,
Yeah.
a symbol of something totally unshakable.
And it's saying your will can break it down. To say that human effort can break down the cosmic mountain is to give human will absolute transformative power over the material and causal world.
Which brings us to the call for manly exertion. The focus shifts entirely to application.
Vasishta is effectively giving Rama, and by extension the listener, you a mandate to exert your force of will. Reliance on fate is intellectual folly. The wise rely on self-control and diligence to overcome cravings and misfortune. They understand that prosperity isn't random, it follows the dedicated.
But how does the text differentiate good effort from, wasted effort? Because people work hard all the time without getting anywhere.
A key point. Human exertions are categorized into two types: lawful and unlawful. Lawful exertion is what leads to success. It's guided by reason, by scripture, and by the intention of liberation. Unlawful exertion is misdirected. It's often driven by temporary desires or ignorance, and it leads to dangerous consequences or just fruitlessness. It's likened to the actions of a madman.
So working 80 hours a week to acquire a kingdom that you ultimately view as rotten straw, that would be unlawful exertion.
Even if it leads to worldly success, yes, because it's driven by attachment. Lawful exertion has to be directed toward the highest good, which is internal freedom.
The text says success is obtainable by lawful effort, whether that success is the inner joy of Brahma or the paramount dominion of Indra, which is worldly power.
The key is the application of the will. The strong thrive by their efforts. The silly and impotent, well, they attribute everything to luck.
The image used to describe the intensity of this exertion is unforgettable. The wise overcome craving and misfortune by Utmost exertion in the right way, like gnashing his teeth.
That image really captures the necessary intensity, doesn't it? This is not some gentle passive meditation. This is vigorous, active resistance to past errors and to current cravings.
If you find yourself led astray by your fate, by the demerit of a former existence, you have to subdue them by the greater energy of your present state. You have to actively fight the momentum of your past self.
That's it.
The ultimate takeaway here is incredibly pragmatic. If we accept the premise that fate is just our own past action waiting to unfold, then the only logical and empowering response is to generate a superior cause right now. The text views fatalism as a form of intellectual paralysis.
It asks, if there were no folly of idleness, what man would fail either to be rich or learned? Everything ultimately is the fruit of deliberate, diligent activity. It's a meritocracy of the will.
Okay. We've established the internal preparation, the sentinels, and the necessary action, lawful effort. Now we have to shift to the target of that effort, the world itself. If we are exerting all this energy to gain liberation from the world, we have to understand the nature of the world, the jagat. And the source material offers a highly radical, illusory perspective.
It really requires a profound shima in thinking. The external world, which appears so solid and so real to us, is in truth only a creation of our desires.
A creation of our desires.
It's described as an ideal castle in the air and a magic view spread before us. The mind is the creator, giving rise to everything, and residing paradoxically in the empty space of the heart.
So the world isn't inherently evil or bad. It is merely an intentional hallucination that is sustained by our own mental engagement and craving. It's the ultimate feedback loop.
And the text uses these extraordinary analogies to drive home this unreality. The world is as false as an earthquake experienced while you're in a state of delirium.
Or a hobgoblin used to terrify children.
Or a phantom city you glimpse in a dream. Or, one of my favorites, a string of pearls in the clear sky.
A string of pearls in the clear sky. That's beautiful. It's utterly convincing at first glance, but if you try to grasp it, there's nothing there but blue vacuum.
Exactly. It implies that our attachment to the external world is based on a fundamental, shared misperception, a kind of collective mental projection.
The text also uses the analogy of a passenger in a boat, seeing the trees on the bank appear to move backward.
Yes. The trees are stationary. The movement, the perception of change and flux is entirely in the mind of the observer, generated by the movement of the boat, which is the ego. If we can stop the ego's movement, the world's perceived movement ceases.
And this realization immediately links back to the idea of being confined by our desires. The undivided intelligent spirit, the universal soul, becomes confined by its desires.
By its mental conditioning, its boat, and it is freed by its lack of them.
The desire for results, the attraction to that phantom city or those pearls in the sky, that's what chains a person to the earth.
Yes. The text declares that to curtail these desires is liberty. That is what the wise call freedom. The knowledge that the world's frailties are just projections of your own mind is the only true way to dispel the darkness of ignorance that binds us.
But if the world is illusory, how does one exist in it? Do you just have to retreat to a cave? How does the philosophy accommodate action, duties, social interaction?
And that is the state of the Jivan Mukta, the person who is liberated while still alive. They are the ultimate embodiment of detached action.
So what does a Jivan Mukta look like to an outsider? How would we even know one?
You likely wouldn't, not outwardly. The Jivan Mukta maintains a placid mind toward the magic scenes of the world. They view all things in an equal light.
So they still perform their duties, they associate with relatives, they experience pleasures and pains.
All of it. But their inner soul remains completely untouched by the results. They operate as if they're playing a role in a play, knowing that the drama is temporary and the consequences aren't truly binding on their real self.
It's like playing a highly complex video game where you know the world inside the game isn't real. You participate fully, you dodge, you fight, you pursue the quest, but your inner self knows the outcome doesn't truly affect your core existence.
That detachment allows for perfect, unburdened action, and it's all predicated on the ultimate realization, the knowledge of the soul, the understanding that the world is without an independent cause, and that all existence is Brahma himself.
And this is where the non-duality really comes in. The dualism of observer and observed, the looker, the ego and the looked, the spectacle, that dissolves.
Because they're both the same being, the false conception of the world as distinct existences, the error of believing that I, you, and he are truly separate, that's what creates all the commotion and desire in the first place.
So final liberation, nirvana or extinction, is the realization of internal peace that comes from the absolute detachment of the spirit from the objects of sense.
Which are merely its own projections. And the text uses several beautiful analogies to explain the two forms of ultimate freedom: embodied liberation while the body is still active, and disembodied liberation after the body is gone.
And the differences.
Purely phenomenal, not substantial. It is like the difference between air in motion and air at rest.
Or seawater in its calm state versus its billowy, agitated state.
The underlying substance, the unattached nature of the soul, remains exactly the same. The only difference is the presence or absence of the physical vehicle that's causing the motion or the waves.
Which brings us back full circle to the practical instruction required for you, the learner. The final act of liberation is attained by fixing the mind on one object, usually the knowledge of the soul, and systematically subduing its desires.
The metaphysical realization absolutely requires the pragmatic, sustained effort we discussed earlier. The lesson is, you cannot wait for external fate to deliver liberation. You have to use your internal effort, that gnashing of the teeth, to dismantle the illusory world created by your own mind until all that remains is the tranquil substance, whether you are alive or disembodied.
For our learner audience, it's so important to understand the weight and context of these teachings. This text isn't just a collection of random philosophical thoughts. It's presented as a systematized guide with a divine lineage. So let's just briefly address the pedigree of this knowledge.
Right, so the teaching is delivered by the sage Vasishta to Rama, and Vasishta received it directly from Brahma, the creator himself.
And the story goes that Brahma, born from Vishnu's heart, created the worlds but immediately observed the tremendous misery and affliction of mankind.
Diseases, dangers, strife. The creation was immediately recognized as imperfect, or at least prone to suffering.
So Brahma tried the traditional fixes first. He set up general rules like austerity, piety, charity.
But he realized these were insufficient to achieve liberation for most beings. The conventional religious path was failing to stop the core suffering.
And he felt compassion like a father for his children.
He did, and he determined that humanity needed a new and sure bridge for the salvation of men. A truly rational and esoteric knowledge that went beyond mere ritual.
And to deliver this, Brahma produced Vasishta directly from himself. But Vasishta, being divine, might not have fully understood the human condition. So Brahma subjected him to a temporary illusion.
It's a fascinating part of the story. He forced Vasishta to experience a momentary curse of unconsciousness, plunging him into distress and sorrow. Vasishta cried out, "How sorrowful is this world! How did evil come to dwell in it?"
So this enforced suffering prompted the subsequent dialogue, forcing Vasishta to inquire into the essence of true knowledge, specifically for humanity's welfare.
It's an intellectual solution that was born out of an empathetic realization.
And once Vasishta was clear, he was instructed to continue teaching ceremonial duties to the general masses.
Those who needed that external structure.
But to counsel those who were genuinely disgusted with the world, with this esoteric knowledge, the rational, advanced understanding that confers true joy.
And it is a vast curriculum. The work totals 32,000 couplets. We don't need to list all the counts, but it's vital to grasp the logical structure of the 6 books, the Prakaranams, which outline the seeker's progression.
The journey begins with detachment, Vairagya Prakaranam, detailing that spontaneous growth of apathy, that distaste for the world we mentioned. You can't start the journey until you have this precondition.
Next is the book we focus so heavily on today, Qualities of the Aspirant, Mumukshu Vyavahara Prakaranam. This is the practical handbook on conduct, covering the 4 sentinels and the supremacy of effort. It equips the seeker.
Then the philosophy dives deep into the metaphysical framework. Creation, Utpatti Prakaranam, uses intricate stories to discuss the world as non-existent and the nature of the spectator and spectacle.
The ego and non-ego. Then the subsequent book, Existence, Sthiti Prakaranam, explains why the illusion persists, how the world's existence is a manifestation of the spectator ego.
Fifth, peacefulness, Upashanti Prakaranam, demonstrates how that false conception of the world as distinct existences, the error of I, you, and he, must be undone to reach true peace. This is the integration phase.
And finally, the vast conclusion, Annihilation, Nirvana Prakaranam. This book describes achieving the ultimate pure state, where all worldly errors are completely erased, and the soul assumes a profound calmness.
And the efficacy of engaging with this whole structured body of knowledge is what's really emphasized at the end. The text claims that reading or hearing this work leads to the immediate obliteration of errors and peace of mind.
The claim is audacious, but it rests on the strength of the philosophy. It says a person requires nothing else in this world for their liberation after studying this work because it provides the rational framework, the practical steps, and the motivational requirement to override all forms of past inertia.
This has been a true deep dive into the practical application of some very ancient philosophy. If we synthesize everything we've discussed, the sentinels, the illusion, the power of will, what is the key takeaway, linking the goal of liberation to the necessary process of effort?
The absolute core truth is that freedom is not granted. It is earned through rigorous, consistent action. That perceived tension between fate and effort is revealed to be really a false dichotomy.
So the big reveal for you, the learner, is that destiny, or daivam, is nothing more than your accumulated, keen, and firm resolutions from the past. It is your own causality, just waiting to happen.
And because destiny is merely your own past effort, it is always possible to override your bad fortune, your accumulated demerits, with superior, deliberate, and lawful energy in the present.
The contention between fate and effort is a fight between two rams.
And your present action must be the stronger ram. It has to be potent enough to cause you to gnash your teeth in focused exertion.
And the practical path to generate that superior energy lies with the four sentinels. Peace of mind, not reaction. Contentment, abandoning unfruitful desire. Good company, refining your standards. And inquiry, subordinating all authority to purified reason.
These are the tools that refine your mind, making your present effort truly effective. Because the entire world is a creation of the mind, a highly detailed, consensual dream. The mind has to be retrained to stop projecting the things it currently craves and fears.
And this leads us to the final provocative thought, something for you to consider long after this deep dive ends.
The text insists that the analogy of the world being a vision and a dream is exact in all instances.
Exact, not just similar.
Because the mechanism, the creation of desires, thoughts, pleasures, and displeasures, is the same whether you are awake or asleep. The mind is always the source of the commotion.
But the text also offers a gentle warning. The human mind is like a child, and it must be trained slowly by gentleness and indulgence, and not by force or hurry.
So knowing that your current reality is fundamentally an illusion of your own making, and knowing that even the greatest worldly success is transient, what single, gentle, yet utterly consistent effort can you commit to today to subtly steer your mind away from attachment and toward that profound tranquility, thus ensuring your present will is always the stronger ram?